For the first time in nearly 3 years, we get to say again, bird up. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. Man, it has been a while since we can sing Sam Bird's praises on this podcast. Hi guys, Dre Harrison here. Welcome to episode 505. No gaming development studio required on this one of Motorsport 101. I'm Dre Harrison. Glad you could join us as ever. We've got a real smorgasbord of racing to talk about this weekend. We're kind of bringing back Keepin It 101 again because we had such a wide range of motorsport to talk about, and polarizing, opinionated, good shit all around. Probably the best weekend of racing we've had all year so far. And we had to ship out one of our co-hosts, our only co-host on this edition of the show, over to Sebring to enjoy the fun times of festivities at the 12 Hours of Sebring over in IMSA. And that was one Mr. RJ O'Connell. Welcome back, RJ. Good to see you.
Hi, welcome. For those of you who listen to this podcast but don't regularly hang out in our community Discord, I'm not dead. If you thought my absence from the last few episodes was I was dead, no, I was just locked into Sebring mode. There is not really a convenient place to record a podcast as there is Daytona, because I'll tell you that I love Sebring International Raceway as a circuit. It is one of those proper old school circuits, registered trademark, except I actually enjoy it, and it's really fun to drive around fast. I got to do that over the weekend.
Cool.
But in terms of its facilities, it was also very old school. We used to have a media center that was now where the corporate suites are. So now the media center is it's fluid. This time it was in assorted rooms behind the pit building, except if you're a photographer, and in that case you had to work at the hotel lobby at the hotel overlooking the Hairpin Turn 7. The hotel is appropriately named 7.
I've been a professional journalist now for just over a month, and I've been part-time as a hobbyist for over 10. I've never heard a media center described as, quote, fluid before. That's quite something.
It's a broom closet. We basically went into a room that had it had air conditioning and monitors on the screen so you could see what's happening. So, it's not the worst experience. It's not absolutely terrible. Christ, even the photographers didn't get the monitors, but I think as we get into this new phase of this new golden age of sports car racing, and apparently there are works for Sebring to renovate its facilities, and that's something that is much needed. It would take away absolutely nothing of the character of the circuit to just build new facilities. You're at the point where you can justify this now. So I really look forward to that happening, but man, you want to talk about the Sebring 12 Hours. That was, wow. That was an interesting race.
I was going to say, I was going to talk about this a little bit anyway, and I felt like we had to, because I did end up watching the majority of this alongside enough Six Nations rugby to make your head spin for the final week of the Six Nations, because apparently Zoe and Kira ran a Discord server. I know you're listening. Hi, ladies. They got me into rugby over the course of this winter, and it's been interesting, to say the least. But
hey, who won the Six Nations?
Oh, Ireland. Well, Ireland kicked ass.
Oh, yo, let's go. Let's go.
Indeed. But what did you make of that race as a man who had, eyes on the ground, and what was the general vibe and sentiment? Because I thought that was an excellent race. I really, really enjoyed it.
I was very fearful that this year's Sebring 12 Hours was going to play out a little bit like last year's, where it would be kind of civilized throughout the daytime, right? It's a 10 a.m. start. It's actually a before 10 a.m. start, and then it finishes under nightfall, and after sunset is when everybody starts to go crazy. It was pretty civilized throughout the daytime hours, save for the first lap where all the GT3 cars nearly get wadded up in an accident. I don't know how Davide Regon's spinning car didn't collect about 15 to 20 cars.
I don't know either. Somehow.
And I don't know how that car came back to finish second in its class despite all this.
Yeah.
And then the other big thing was, it was hard to miss the sight of Pipo Derani pulling away to a lead by seconds per lap. He comes up to clear a slower GTD car, clips him. It goes into the tire barriers and up and over onto its roof, with Derani landing head first onto the tires. Not like literally head first, but the car landed on top of the
upside
tires.
Upside down, yeah.
And that was just like, wow, that was the favorite car of the race. Derani going for his 5th win at Sebring, and that car is now out of the race. So now it's anybody's game. Glad everybody came away with that all right, because that could have been very scary.
That was a nasty one. I was genuinely concerned about a couple of elements of that. The tires being pushed out very close to the fan area where a lot of the RVs and caravans were being camped out. That made me a little bit nervous. That's something that may need to be looked at going forward, because
Yep.
It was a very, the odds of a car actually going off there normally is very slim normally, but you never know. And
yeah.
That was a freak accident, but the amount of tire pushback was a little bit concerning. Also, Shout out to that one fan who tried to hop over the catch fence trying to help. But I hate to be this person. Please don't do that.
Please don't do that. The hybrid is probably engaged. You could get yourself electrocuted. That's why, there are specific protocols in place that says you don't touch the car when this is turned on.
Yeah, all you at best, you are a distraction for the safety team and professionals that are meant to do their job there. The worst case scenario is you're touching a car that potentially could be dangerous, and if you touch a live car, you're a dead man, and we don't want that. And that'll be very awful. So please don't do it.
Definitely. I was just actually watching the race from not far from where that accident happened, chilling with the members of the World Endurance Championship Reddit Discord, who seemed to take a liking to me. No, it was a good time. And then I watched it there for a little bit. I came back. I'm thinking, man, Derani's got this covered. And then he's upside down on the tires. I don't think it would take much at all to just bundle up the tires at least. Too many of them were flying here, there, and everywhere. And while nobody got hurt by that, it's something to think about as the race went on. But yeah, once sunset happened, we did get a bit of silliness in the end. But we did get a much more satisfying finish than we had last time. Because if you remember Sebring last year, we had a great 3-way battle for the lead between what was then Wayne Taylor and Andretti's only Acura and the 2 Porsche Penske's, spoiled when the 6 and the 10 crashed into each other, wiped out the 7. And from that point, it was just a matter of Jack Aitken holding his own in the final restart with a few minutes to go. No, this was a bit more satisfying. It came down to Sebastian Bourdais and the Ganassi Cadillac, which we learned heading into that weekend, Chip Ganassi Racing and Cadillac are going their separate ways. So somebody else is going to run the second Cadillac in IMSA, and there will be 2 cars in the World Endurance Championship, but we don't know who's going to run them.
That is going to be interesting.
Yep, it's Bourdais versus Louis Delatraz and the brand new number 40 WTR Andretti Acura. Bourdais is getting all the good restarts, but as the run goes on, Delatraz keeps reeling him in. When 6 minutes to go at the hairpin, Delatraz makes his move up the inside of the hairpin. They're side by side for a few corners. It's a little bit of a touch to separate them. It wasn't anything foul. I think it was just card racing, and Delatraz, Colton Herta, Jordan Taylor win the 12 Hours of Sebring, breaking Cadillac's stranglehold in the event, and giving the number 40 Acura a signature win, and Louis Delatraz a signature win for his top flight career.
Yeah, somewhere Sebastian Bourdais is probably going to lay a dirty protest at Jack Hawks's house after that Lexus got in the way with 4 minutes to go on the final corner and split the pack like Hakkinen and Schumacher at Spa all over again.
We had two of those moments in that race.
I know, it's crazy. Look, it was an incredible final fight between those two guys at the end of the race. The last 15 minutes was two heavyweight boxers throwing lumps at each other. It was an incredible back and forth. Bourdais had driven an absolute blinder the whole race, and I think he did something like 6 out of the 12 hours in that car, as did Delatraz. They both, I think, led the timing sheet in terms of minutes clocked in their respective cars. Like, I'm a bit biased. I got to interview Louis Delatraz last year for WTF1. He's a delightful young man, very classy, lovely bloke. And you know, I was really I pull for people that hook us up on any places that I've worked for, and he's a lovely guy, and he was a guy that I think always got a bit of a bad rap because of his surname, without realizing that his dad was actually a pretty good sports car guy.
Yeah, that's the other thing about this, is that every time Louis Delatraz gets behind the wheel of a race car, he comes up with new answers to that famous question that the great Murray Walker once sarcastically asked of his dad during his time in Formula One. That question is, what is Delatraz doing? Well, in this case, it is stealing the show of the 12 Hours of Sebring. It is asserting himself as one of the best top-tier prototype drivers in the world. What is Delatraz doing? He's cooking. That's what he's doing.
He's cooking, and I'm immensely proud of him. I mean, that was an incredible final stint. He was setting Bourdais up for that hairpin pass. And then with 6 minutes to go, he slammed it down the inside and made it work. He was incredible in that sense. And it was an incredible stint. Like you said, it's a marquee win for Delatraz. And I'm delighted Colton Herta got a win because he was brilliant at Daytona earlier this year as well. He put in a real shift in that number 40 car.
So did you know that his dad won his class in 2007 driving an Acura prototype owned by, in full this time, Michael Andretti?
It's funny how these things turn out, doesn't it? It's a marquee win for the team. It's a marquee win for Louis Delatraz. I must admit, he was a little bit sketchy at the start of that final stint. He did kind of bump out one of the other hypercars and got away with it, but we'll ignore that. You know, it never happened. Put it back in the box. No, but beyond that, an incredible run. Turns out the 01 does have a bit of good luck left in it. All you got to do is just not paint it yellow. Apparently paint it gold solves all the problems for the most part.
An actual gold-painted Cadillac instead of them painting the car yellow and them telling you, oh, this is the gold-fronted Cadillac. No, that's yellow. This was gold for Mobil 1's 50th anniversary. And I'll tell you, like, that 01 car was having ABS issues and was having problems throughout the race. And just to really ice it home, they and the number 7 Porsche put themselves on a really compromised strategy where they basically had to hope for safety cars to get back into the fight. I mean, they eventually got him, but man, that's tough for them to finish second. But it does prove that there is still some good left in this team. It's not all bad execution. It's just that they're a little bit unlucky. And if I'm Cadillac, you know, there are reasons why they decided to go their separate ways, Cadillac and Ganassi. But part of me still thinks that maybe they made the decision a little bit too soon. I don't know. I'm open to seeing what they have in store for 2025. The list of potential candidates that could take over. It's fascinating.
I was going to say, do you have, you know your sports cars better than I do, RJ. Do you have a gut feeling as to why this marriage is separating all of a sudden? Because it seemingly come out as a little bit of a shock that this has happened.
On the World Endurance Championship side, I was really hoping that they would have like just more than a year's worth of data in a time where LMDH cars, the ones you see in IMSA, weren't running as like, you know, the effective equivalent of claiming rules teams in MotoGP back in the day. That's what they were versus Toyota and Ferrari, especially in 2023. Now it's a more level playing field. The talk in the paddock that we have on the record is that Action Express could easily hop in and take over that second car. So, hey, if you don't like Action Express now with one car, get ready for 2 of them. That's not going to be much of a drop-off. A lot of people have come forward as candidates to want to run the WEC side. I've heard everything from United Autosport, who have their ties from McLaren, who at this point still aren't really that interested in hypercar for whatever reason. I've heard TF Sport, who run the Corvettes in World Endurance Championship. I've heard Jota, who have an awesome privateer Porsche program in place and might be lured by some factory money. You never know. We don't know, but his few months are going to be fascinating, to say the least. Can I also shout out the fact that Lamborghini wasn't completely terrible in its first race in America?
Yeah, did well, got to the finish relatively cleanly, not too many problems. Obviously, the pace isn't there yet, but that's understandable for your first race going. That's about as successful a debut show as I think anybody could have reasonably hoped for, right?
Yeah, if you finish this race, you're pretty much in line for a good result.
Right. We know how this story goes. So good for Lamborghini. Good to see Grosjean out there having a good time. I respect that. By the time you got in, though, on Sunday night, we'd also witnessed.
Oh, I didn't see any of this, but I heard some shit. This was the Spring Bristol race on concrete now.
Yep,
this is the 500 laps, no dirt, just concrete. And I think everybody was like amazed at the level of tire degradation in this race. The point that NASCAR and Goodyear had to authorize an additional set of tires just for everybody to make it to the finish of the race. Denny Hamlin won. We say all that for a Denny Hamlin win, but I thought this was like really fascinating to follow from afar. Just like, this might be something that helps break up the malaise of short track racing in NASCAR nowadays, because if you haven't been following, it's very much been processional racing throughout.
Dale Jr. hosted his podcast with his jeans wrapped around his ankles at how excited he was at this race. And I'm only half joking when I say this. I've been watching NASCAR full time now for like a season and a half, so I'm fairly new to the sport in general. I've never seen a short track like that where the tires were good for maybe 40 laps in a 500 lap race. They had 9 sets of tires, and as RJ quite rightly said, they had to authorize a 10th set. And at one point, we weren't sure if they were actually going to make it. If anything, we kind of got a little bit lucky that there were so many cautions towards the end of stints, i.e. someone had spun out. Josh Berry was in the wars all day, for example. There have been a couple of crunches here and there that brought out cautions, and a couple of spins like Ty Gibbs as well, who was very, very fast on in those conditions. But it was that second to last stint where they were like, okay, we have maybe 100 laps to go. Just how long can we get green flag running, and just how long can these tires go before they explode? And the answer was about 50 laps. And then we really started hearing incidents about cords going off, and guys that were running to the pits going as late as they dared before the tyre goes completely flat or exposed. Luckily, it wasn't all that dangerous because the speeds were so low in the grand scheme of things compared to a super speedway or a bigger oval track.
Nobody's thinking of this as like a mitigated disaster like the 2008 Brickyard 400, a race that was so notoriously bad with its tire problems that it arguably killed the prestige of what was a crown jewel event in the NASCAR Cup Series as we knew it.
Yeah, 100%. It was a race that was quite shocking, and at the time I said, that was fun, let's never do that again. But the drivers seemingly loved it. They were like, yeah, more of this. Like, tyres that don't last as long as the fuel supply. They all said that, okay, 40 laps was a little bit too much, but basically keep it like this, where tyre management comes into play on short tracks. Which is kind of funny because Goodyear was kind of apologizing by around 2/3 distance, saying, yeah, we kind of went too far on this. And Josh Berry, who texted Dale Jr., and Dale shared the screenshot of text saying, I finished that race with my car on fire and 3 flats, and I loved it.
Dude, the only person that wasn't having a good time in those conditions is Kyle Larson, which that's very humorous in a lot of ways, but like...
punch drywall.
Yeah.
Is what I say
dude.
to that.
Yeah, dude. Like, maybe not have it be as silly with the tire fallout, but that's one of the things that you need to have, because look, you're not going to be able to like develop a car specifically for short track racing in this next gen package, right? So you've got to find something to break up the monotony, because up until this point, one of the things that's been a trend is like, yes, people wanted short track racing, but the more and more that we've gotten, whether it was at Bristol, Martinsville, Richmond, North Wilkesboro, the racing has been very, very processional. It has not lived up to the hype. So having higher deck tires in an event like this could be a way to help bring that back.
Definitely. I very much enjoyed the carnage. And I liked it a lot more than most of the mundane short track races we've had in NASCAR to this point. In this new generation of car, this was a definite improvement. And look, if the drivers loved it, who am I to complain as a fan back there? And, I'm glad that everybody except Kyle Larson had a good time. In fact, no, take that back. I'm especially happy that everybody besides Kyle Larson had a good time, as a matter of fact. Should we talk a bit about Formula E, RJ?
Yeah. Before we do, though, want to give out a couple final shouts out from Sebrings. First of all, Connor Zilic is 2/3 of the way to the Triple Crown in LP2. Two IMSA starts, 2 IMSA wins in the Premier Class.
He's 17.
That boy is nice. I had to ask him, like, is this easy to manage, having all this immediate success? And he said, no, it's not. I'm just lucky I have the good people in place that I have. Jack Hawksworth continues to be so much better than we ever would have pegged him out to be in IndyCar, because he also had a maniacal dive bomb pass for the win in his class in GTD Pro. I thought that was very fun. Can I also shout out as well that we had 2 black drivers win their respective support races on the same day. Weston Workman in Emmett's 5 Cup and Ernie Francis Jr. in Lamborghini Super Trofeo. And I got the photo from the Emmett's 5 Cup finish. It was kind of this lucky thing where I was just like, I'm at a Mobile One luncheon. It's up in the press boxes, right? And as I'm walking out to kind of see the finish of the race, I realize there is a table that's overlooking the start-finish line, and nobody's sitting there. So I get my camera ready. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a fun finish. Snap the photo. Workman gets him by a bumper, and
4 thousandths of a second.
Yeah, the whole every car in the photo was within 0.2.
And there was 5 cars in the photo for perspective. And at that speed in an MX-5, 4 thousandths has to be maybe 3 inches. At most, at that kind of speed. That is absolutely insane. Like, if you have not watched the MX-5 Cup anywhere in the world, it's carnage. And RJ showed me the photo right now. Yeah, like, it's not quite accurate because obviously the picture's obviously like slightly past the start-finish line, but Workman's ahead by less than a foot, comfortably.
It's the width of a bumper.
It's incredible. I mean, American Motorsport has had 2 all-timer side-by-side finishes in the last month. It's absolutely insane. Incredible racing. And congrats to Ernie Francis. I've always been one of the few people that's been quite vocal about Ernie seemingly cast aside in the Force Indy program as the awkwardness of Miles Rowe's rise through IndyCar has continued. I felt very bad that Ernie was kind of shown the door at that team to facilitate him. So I'm glad that Ernie's landed on his feet and winning races. That's very, very cool to see.
Ernie loves it in these environments. I'm sure he's going to be racing a lot this year. Seeing him win in Super Trofeo was awesome. It made me stand up and take stock in Super Trofeo. Like, I wasn't planning to take stock in all the support races, but that was cool to see. I'd love to see him back in single-seaters at some point. Hopefully something happens down the road, but I'm sure whatever he drives, he's going to be like really, really awesome at it. Now I'm ready to talk about some Formula E, but first, Dre, I think we should tell the good people where to find us.
Yes, you can. You can find us on Elon Musk's failed business investment at Dre Harrison 101 and at RJ O'Connell. Can be back next week. C Buckley 917 Motorsport_101 is the pod. As well, you can find us on our Instagram page, Motorsport101 Pod. Before anyone asks as well, episode 502 has been re-uploaded. The eyes are not playing tricks on you. This was an error that I made, or I gave you 503 twice by accident. That's my bad. It was my mistake. Spotify has different ways of updating the feed after you replace a file. So if you listen to this show on iTunes or SoundCloud or off the website or any other platform directly, you'd have been fine. But Spotify, you got to manually refresh the feed. So I was told that afterwards by a friend of the show, a guy called Mark. So thanks, Mark, for correcting me on that one. I do appreciate that. Just to clarify, don't worry, this was me just rectifying my mistake. So sorry, Spotify listeners, for that one. That's kind of my fault. Also, you can find us on our website, Motorsport101.com, if you want to get reviews of all of last week's action, whether that be Formula One in Saudi Arabia, MotoGP in Qatar, IndyCar in St. Petersburg as well. And obviously, there'll be full reviews next week for Formula One once again as they race in Australia this weekend, MotoGP second round of the year in Portimao as well. And hey, if I'm feeling spicy, maybe IndyCar at the Thermal Club gets a mention as well, even though it's a non-championship round.
We're gonna have another loaded weekend of racing coming up here soon. So let's enjoy that we can have a quasi Keeping It 101 segment while we still can.
Indeed.
But who is going to take the win of round 4 of the ePrix? And look at Bird go for the outside. Surely he's not going to make that stick on Mitch Evans into turn 10. Bird's done it. Absolutely amazing from Sam Bird. He comes around the final corner to win here in Sao Paulo. Sam Bird takes his first victory since 2022.
Now it's time to jump into the Sao Paulo ePrix. And for the second year in a row, Formula E in Sao Paulo was a very good race. It was a strong race. And in the 30-degree punishing heat, that's 30-degree new money. For our Fahrenheit folks, it's like 85, 90. But regardless, it's hot. And McLaren Sam Bird threw a Hail Mary outside pass at Mitch Evans on the penultimate corner of the final lap of the race to win his first Formula E Prix since the 2021 New York ePrix weekend. It was
the one where King and Cam were at. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah, remember that? That's how long it's been since Sam Bird had won a Formula E race up until this past weekend. It was McLaren's first win as a Formula E team. It was Nissan's first win as a powertrain supplier since the days of EDAMS. So, Dre, just how important a win was this for everybody involved?
It's a big one in theory. I mean, Sam Bird, I've joked about on this show last year because of how rough he had it at Jaguar. He was meant to be the last piece in the puzzle for Jaguar to win multiple Formula E championships, whether it be via maybe potentially supporting Mitch Evans, whether it be Jaguar as a manufacturer as a whole. Bird was meant to be the last piece of the jigsaw, and it didn't work out. And it did not help that he clattered into Mitch Evans and ruined his race twice last year. He kind of left that team a little bit in disgrace. McLaren gave him an opportunity, and McLaren is a team that, they bought the remains of Mercedes, and they haven't really been able to replicate their success since. They've had to obviously settle for Nissan powertrains, which be Nissan's customer team, which, again, maybe not the most ideal of circumstances, but it was not. And look, it's hard not to root for Sam Bird. Like, he is an incredibly likable man. He's been one of the series' biggest believers, biggest supporters. He's been there from the very start. I mentioned it when I wrote about it on the website last week. 35 drivers took part in the first season of Formula E in some capacity. Only 5 are still here. And Bird is one of them.
It's Bird, it's Lucas Degrassi, of course, Mr. Formula E, as he so rightly promotes himself as. It's Sebastian Buemi, it's Jean-Eric Verne, and it's who was the last name on that list?
And Antonio Felix da Costa.
Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't think it was first season, but he was. Yeah, those are the 5 guys still left standing from season 1, which feels like an eternity ago.
It was a decade ago. It was 10 years ago. We're talking about Sam Bird has become a fully fledged dad and adult in the time this series has been around now. And he's now third on the all-time appearances list. He's second on the all-time wins list. He's got 12 Formula E wins. I think only Buemi has more at 13. He's been here from the very start. He's been a part of the furniture. I wasn't sure he was going to be back this year after what happened at Jaguar, but it is nice to get a reminder that Bird can still win one of these things.
What a spectacular reminder, by the way. I didn't have time to watch the race as it happened, so I had to catch up later. Wow. That move around the outside, Tom Brooks gave it all the gusto that a moment like that deserved because, man, that was an incredible overtake. Clutch, perfectly executed, cleanly executed. Sam Bird is back on top form.
You know what's funny as well? Do you remember this race last year when Sam Bird was in second and we kind of had a go at him for not going for the killer overtake on the final lap?
Yeah. This is like if the Pato War thing from the last two Indy 500s actually worked out as intended.
Yeah. It's amazing because like Bird had a shot to win this race last year and didn't take it when he was fighting. I think it was Nick Cassidy for the win around here last year. He was in second. He was bumper to bumper with Cassidy and didn't go for the Hail Mary pass to try and win it. And I was critical of him for not going for it at that point. This year, he sent it around the outside, and it's incredible. There is a yellow flag. There's a local yellow at the pit entry on that final corner. If he didn't make that move, he doesn't win the race. Period. Because Evans could have just coasted it home. And that's part of this as well, which plays a big role in this. Nissan's powertrains are able to handle the extreme weather better than everybody else because not only was it 30 degrees in the air, it was 60 degrees on track.
That is balmy. That's hot. So congratulations to Nissan. Like, we've been waiting for a while. Is this powertrain ever going to reach like anything, the potential that we think it's going to have? Or is it just kind of a flop? At least in this race, no, this was masterful for them because we got two of their cars on the podium.
It was weird in the sense that Nissan, ever since their innovations got banned in season 3, when EDAMS, the artist formerly known as EDAMS, dominated season 2 of the series, Nissan's never been able to get back to those dizzying heights, or anywhere near those dizzying heights.
I think you could argue that like the entire Renault-Nissan alliance has never gotten back to those heights. And I think coincidentally it involves, a disgraced CEO having to smuggle himself out of the country in a music case.
Carlos go and do crime, baby. Carlos go and do crime. We never forget on this show. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like Nissan has been a story of lost potential and trying to dig themselves out of that hole ever since. And this is the first time they've ever had two Nissan powertrains on a Formula E podium before, because Oliver Rowland did a bit of a heist of his own because Jake Dennis was trying to nurse his very in danger of overheating Andretti to the line, couldn't do it, and then Wehrlein beats him in a drag race to the finish, but then Rowland goes around the outside of the pair of them and is able to steal the podium on a photo finish. Full Lightning McQueen in car style, winning via a tongue. And
MX5 moment.
MX5 moment of its own, and Ollie Rowland gets back-to-back podiums for Nissan, which is weird. Ollie Rowland is back and cooking. Who'd have thought it? It's one of the low-key stories of the season so far is that Oliver Rowland, who left the series in disgrace halfway through last year with Mahindra, is back with Nissan and getting excellent results for them right now. He's been excellent. He's been doing it for Yorkshire, as you do, because he's bringing podiums back to his hometown of Barnsley, as you do. But no, it's an incredible win for Bird, who needed something like this to remind us that he's still really good at this. Bird still genuinely believes he can win a title. While I wouldn't go that far just yet, I do think I understand his frustration and I understand how excited he was to be able to win again. Nissan and McLaren. This is McLaren's first Formula E win. Like
Yeah.
we forget all this, that McLaren's been around for just over 2 seasons now.
We forget that McLaren basically bought up the entry vacated by Mercedes, which at the time that they left, like, that was becoming the gold standard of Formula E. So McLaren takes over, and you think, what do you expect? Surely it'll be a continuation of the same thing. And for the first kind of like year and a quarter, it wasn't like that.
No.
There were flashes of it, but it just felt like the same kind of underachieving McLaren enterprise that we've come to expect out of Formula One for the most part since the end of 2012, in IndyCar for the most part since 2020.
Yeah, it's been a struggle bus for McLaren so far. Like, Jake Hughes has got excellent qualifying pace. The Nissan powertrain, I still think, is very good over a lap. But their regen is still lacking. And even if you watch that race, Bird has the least amount of usable energy going over the line. Dennis had 2% in hand. It was the overheating that won him this race. It wasn't the regen. That's still a problem for Nissan powertrains. And yet, Bird did enough to get the win. McLaren did enough to get a win. And you know what? Formula E needed something like this. It really did, because its season's been a damp squib so far. Morale, I think, in this series has never been lower. We've talked about it on this show. I've talked about it on the website about the pay-to-air market in the UK. A lot of UK fans are despondent at the series and having to pay £30 a pop to be able to watch this a month. And, the races have not been particularly good so far this season. This was a genuinely good race.
Yeah.
Annoyingly, though, King made a very good point. Ryan Eric King in our Discord server, when he pointed out from F1 Broadcasting, Dave does fantastic work over there. Give him a follow, by the way. Shout out to Dave. Pointed out that the views on this online were not good. Not bad on X. About 350,000 saw that final overtake. But if you look at their YouTube page, 80,000 views for the race review, for the race highlights, and only 20,000 people watched that final lap on YouTube. On any level, that's not good.
Yeah, like it kind of ties back to that whole IMSA actually did something nice. They streamed all the 12 hours of Sebring on YouTube for the international audience, because they kind of realized something like, as nice as it is to have our own bespoke media player on our own website, this will give us numbers. And regardless of whether those numbers are good or bad, it lets us know if we're meeting expectations or not for our international audience in what is ostensibly a regional, a national championship. For Formula E, I can't imagine that a highlights package of one of the all caps best finishes, end all caps, in Formula E history, ! Should only be pulling in 80K views a few days afterwards. And yeah, I don't know what's up, because all the ingredients are here. The driving talent's not the problem. They go to fun places. But if a finish like that can't get people excited, then I don't know what will, outside of the core audience that Formula E already has, that it's had for years and years. But it's just a matter of growing that. And I guess that also ties into a vibe-based question, because you rewatch the race, and commentator Tom Brooks, doing a great job, by the way.
Absolutely.
Mentioned the phrase repeatedly, Peloton Racing, to describe the action as the whole grid bunched up early and then stretched out towards the end. We saw it at its most extreme at Portland last year. That was the race where it was just everything is happening all at once, the point of overload. But this is becoming the thing of Formula E recently. This is the kind of racing that most teams have decided this is going to be the most efficient way for us to make it to the finish and be competitive. Is what we saw at Sao Paulo a sustainable version of entertainment for Formula E?
I don't know. It's does it send out the right message that 35 to 40 minutes out of a 50-minute race is basically not worth watching? That worries me. I mean, okay, when I wrote about it on the website, the comparison I made was to cycling, and because obviously Formula E wants to. I don't know if Tom's been fed a line to call it Peloton Racing to smooth it out a little bit and make it sound cool. I know many series have this knack of, trying to diamond encrust a turd. I know Formula One's very guilty of that on numerous occasions. And like cycling, it's different because a cycling stage takes hours normally. And if you're watching it, you're going out of your way to watch it for the long haul. You know that certain stages will go through the mountains, certain stages are built so that there's a sprint at the end, certain stages are opportunities for someone to potentially need a breakaway attempt, and that's where your intrigue comes from. Formula E's is seemingly now trying to lean into this crescendo effect where it's like everybody backs each other up, everybody toes off each other, everybody now takes their attack modes very early because the risk of leaving it too late to take one is just too risky. If there's a late safety car, if there's a late red flag, like Jason makes a great point in our chat about this. They predicted before, like Lucas deGrassi predicted before Sao Paulo there'll be about 150 overtakes. He was right. There was about 150 overtakes in the race. But did it feel like they felt like they weren't important? And I think that's a very good point. And look, I am not one of these people that measures race excitement by number of overtakes. IndyCar is the walking proof of that, especially on things like oval races, for example, where passing is common and most of it doesn't matter. It's not like it's a law of diminishing returns argument here when it comes to that. I just wonder, is it a good TV product if 3/4 of your race is all about setting up the last 4-5 laps at the end of a race? I don't know. How do you feel about it, RJ? Because I know you've watched many a Formula E race yourself.
I have. I guess I want to ask, how good is it that at what is now called drafting races, these are the NASCAR races at Daytona, Talladega, and now Atlanta, which we used to call restrictor plate races, that there is a feeling that, the first 80 to 90% of a race doesn't matter except for, not getting caught up in a massive pileup. It's all about, that final sprint to the flag at a race at Talladega, Daytona, Atlanta, what have you. It's all about making moves to set yourself up for that. The difference is that NASCAR has some variety in its races, and it has the cachet of a strong fan base who, bless them, sometimes they don't know what they want out of their sport, 99% of the time, but at least they're passionate about it, and trying to draw in new audiences. I don't know what this is doing for me. I don't know if this is sustainable. It's not, I don't hate it when I watch it, but I can understand why people kind of don't vibe with it either.
Every time we've streamed the race via totally legal means in our Discord server, we've been able to have conversations in the first 2/3 of a Formula E race and not feel like we've missed anything important. That is a small concern to me. Now, don't get me wrong, in this instance, we got the finish that Formula E was aiming for when they called it Peloton Racing. We got a sprint finish at the end, and we got the happy ending. But let's not forget, in Mexico, we didn't have that. In Mexico, Pascal Wehrlein was able to pull clear from Buemi, and that race was processional. All right, that was a race that had... You didn't get an overtake count for that race now, did you? Because there was 3 of them the whole race. Diriyah, they tried that. In race 1, Jake Dennis completely broke the field over his knee. And then in race 2, Cassidy tried a breakaway, got caught, but it didn't matter because nobody could pass anyway. So they've tried, this is clearly the way Formula E races are being shaken up now in this era.
Yeah, this is the most efficient way to complete a 50-minute race, without any sort of quick recharging or anything like that, without car changes. This is the way it has gone down. It's just like how the first portion of the Daytona 500, everybody was lifting off so crazy that NASCAR is starting to think about ways that they could possibly police cars not running at full throttle to try and make things seem a little more legitimate.
Yeah, it's clearly something that other series are taking on board or noticing. I don't know what the solution is at this point. Do you make your races shorter to avoid something like that? Do you, because they've made a big deal about making their races longer, they're trying to add pit stops now, which is going to be coming at Misano. Maybe they've had to. There was meant to be a test here. Nobody ran it, really. Misano's coming around the corner.
Yep.
They've tried to add laps back onto races to make up for it, try and be dramatic by not announcing the amount of added laps until the last 5 minutes. It's like they're trying to get another Valencia situation go down. I'm not sure what the solution is. This a problem that's worth solving, first and foremost? And second, if you are trying to solve this problem, how do you do it? Do you shave the laps off the race? You don't really want that because you don't want to be on TV for shorter now, do you?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, you shouldn't be as a racing series. Like, this isn't horse racing. The pre-race show should not be like longer than the race itself by order of magnitude.
Right. So,
and I understand that, like, to some people, like, the way the product is kind of a turnoff. But I also feel like, I realize it sounds like very half-baked with all this, but I also just feel like, Formula E does have to eventually, like, latch onto something. Like, it can't, like, take all the negative feedback from all the sources and try to please everybody. They've got to find a way to just, like, this is what we are. This is the kind of racing we produce. If you're on board with it, great. If you're not, well, we can't really help you there. There's plenty of other motorsport around.
22,000 views for that final lap on YouTube.
I feel like that should be a lot more. And Jason pointed out another interesting thing. Formula E has over 800,000 subscribers. IMSA is about 350K. And I'd say, like, you could break even with the highlights of the two races. And again, we're talking about World Championship versus a regional/national series.
Heavily promoted World Championship, may I add. A championship that's throwing hundreds of thousands of pounds at celebrities and influencers to help promote it.
Yeah.
22,000 views for a final lap. One of its greatest ever finishes on any level. If that's not a cause for concern, then I don't know what is. Because that was the series at its best at this point, and no one watched it. I know their YouTube channel is partially geo-blocked in some countries, which probably isn't helping here either.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But why is it geo-blocked? Like, you need as many eyes on this as possible. I don't understand.
Well, I guess in my case, it's just like Paramount Plus and CBS paid good money to have the exclusive rights to show Formula E on Paramount Plus and the CBS Sports networks, and they don't want to give that up.
Yeah. It's not ideal. Hopefully, the next race for Formula E will catch a spot, because it's a place where they've always wanted to go. It's Tokyo next weekend.
Japan's first internationally sanctioned street race. This is not a rental kart race in a faraway town on not even the main island like we had in 2019. This is Formula E World Championship racing in capital T, Tokyo.
Please do well. I want this to do well. I really like a Formula E race in Tokyo is cool as shit, and I would really like to see it do well. It's the one that jumped off the page to me when I saw this calendar late last year. And also, it's worth pointing out as well, Jason, before we go as well, Formula E now officially licensed in Trackmania.
That's cool. Right. Yeah, this is like, it's really good. I actually got to see it. Our friend Rezi actually showed us some of the gameplay, because he's a big Trackmania guy, plays it competitively. So we got to see like a sample of what this looks like, and wow, it looks very faithful to the real thing, but it's also very faithful to the essence of Trackmania, which, if you don't know, is like one of the premier skill-based, you against the clock arcade racers that there is. There's a reason why it still has a strong player base after being in the game for like 20 years.
Yeah, and it's a great game to fit that series out. And I was watching it with Rezi earlier, and yeah, it's like showing off the tracks because there's Tokyo, Berlin, and London all featured, and they've got power usage. It's got attack mode featured in there as well, and energy conservation genuinely does matter. It's a very clever collaboration, and it's been done very well. More cool shit like this, please, Formula E, because that's how you do it, right there.
This might be the most faithful recreation of Formula E racing in a sim outside of R Factor 2.
100%.
And this game has been in more games than R Factor 2 and Trackmania.
100%.
Well, Dre, it was really tough talking about a great race for series and net centric prices. Thankfully, we don't have to do that this coming weekend. As I look at my calendar and I see that the IndyCar $1 million challenge at the Thermal Club is this weekend, and Formula One's in Australia. Well, at least MotoGP's not single seaters.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm actually genuinely looking forward to MotoGP in Portimao. It's the first proper test of the MotoGP roster this year. When you've done a bunch of testing around Qatar, it's a bit of a blank slate kind of round. Portimao is generally going to be very interesting. We're going to get the first real picture, into my opinion, as to what the state of the field actually looks like. Is Marc Marquez a real contender? I think we'll know a lot more about that after Portimao this weekend. Miguel Oliveira always goes well around here as well. He's very strong on his home track. Hopefully he doesn't get taken out by Marquez this time. Yep. We'll see how the field plays out. Hopefully everybody gets back at home in one piece, because Portimao wasn't like that last year. So
without doubt.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully that comes out nicely. As said, well, F1 in Australia also next week. If we're feeling frisky, we might do the Thermal Club at IndyCar as well. The mood regarding that $1 million challenge right now is not great. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of sourness over the marketing, the prize money, the poor track. It feels like a bit of a cash grab at the moment. I'm not going to lie to you.
I was generally like one of the people excited about this when this idea first came out. Now the mood is so sour. So inevitably what this means is we're going to have an interesting race regardless. And also it'd be wise for Callum Ilott to put in a strong performance, because his IndyCar future might hinge on it.
Yeah.
Also, Max Verstappen trying to tie his own record for most consecutive Formula One wins.
He's going for 10 in a row. If he wins in Australia this weekend, he will match his own record he set at Monza last year for 10 consecutive Formula One wins. If he wins, it'll be his 20th win in the last 21 Grand Prix.
Yeesh.
He's lost one race since last May. That terrifies me.
What also terrifies me is the prospect of another goofy-ass restart like we had last year. Hopefully, we don't have to resort to that kind of tactics.
Yeah, hopefully we do. Hopefully we get a generic one-stopper. Yay. So yeah, that'll do it for this episode of Motorsport 101. We'll be back next week for Formula 1 in Australia, MotoGP at Portimao, maybe a bit of IndyCar at the Thermal Club as well, because, hey, if we don't do it, we'll have no IndyCar for a month. Because we still have that stupid month-long break in April. I do not understand why this happens. Anyway, more of that next week. I've been Dre Harrison. He's been RJ O'Connor. We'll see you next time for some more Motorsport 101. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Sayonara.
Later, y'all.